Have you ever faced a moment in life where nothing made sense, where your prayers seemed to go unanswered, and you wondered if God was even listening? Maybe you've experienced heartbreak, loss, or a situation so painful that you asked, God, why? If you have ever felt this way, you are not alone. We all encounter seasons where life feels unfair, where the path ahead is unclear, and where doubt tries to creep in. But in those very moments, when life is hardest, when the answers don't come, when everything in us wants to give up, that is when trusting God matters the most. Tonight, I want to encourage you with this truth. God is still in control, even when life doesn't make sense. His ways are higher, His plan is greater, and His love for you has never wavered. So I invite you to open your heart, listen closely, and let's journey together through the unshakable power of trusting God no matter what. Life often takes unexpected turns. We make plans, set goals, and dream about the future, only to find ourselves in situations we never anticipated. A sudden loss, a financial setback, a broken relationship. Things happen that shake us to the core, leaving us confused and searching for answers. And in those moments, when nothing makes sense, we often ask God, what are you doing? Why is this happening? But here's the truth. God's plan is far greater than our understanding. He sees what we cannot see. He knows what we do not know. And while we may only catch glimpses of the present struggle, He holds the entire story in His hands. The problem is, we want clarity, we want explanations, and we want to understand everything before we trust. But that's not how faith works. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about believing that God already does. Think about a child holding their parent's hand while crossing a busy street. The child doesn't understand the traffic patterns, the dangers, or the timing of the crossing signal. They simply hold on, trusting that their parent knows when it's safe to walk. That's the kind of trust God desires from us. When we face chaos, when we don't know what's coming next, He says, just hold on, I've got this. Some of you may be going through something right now that feels unfair, unbearable, or unexplainable. Maybe you've prayed and the situation hasn't changed. Maybe you've asked God for direction, but all you hear is silence. Let me remind you, just because you don't see God working doesn't mean He's not moving. He is always at work behind the scenes, weaving together something greater than you can imagine. The Bible is filled with stories of people who didn't understand what God was doing at the time. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. He was betrayed, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. I'm sure there were nights he sat in that dark cell wondering, God, where are you? But years later, he stood as second in command over all of Egypt, and he could finally say to his brothers, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Maybe right now, you're in the middle of a season where life doesn't make sense. The pain is real. The confusion is overwhelming. And the temptation is to doubt, to wonder if God really sees you, if He really cares, if He really has a plan. But let me assure you, He does. His timing is perfect. His plans for you are good. And even though you may not understand what He's doing right now, one day you will look back and see that He was guiding you all along. So what do we do in the meantime? We trust. We trust when the road is unclear. We trust when the storm doesn't pass as quickly as we'd like. We trust when the answers don't come in the way we expected, because the God who holds the universe together is the same God who holds your life in His hands. And He has never failed. Trusting God isn't difficult when life is going the way we expect, when prayers are answered, when blessings flow, when everything is falling into place. It's easy to say God is good, but what about when the storm comes? What about when the doctor gives a diagnosis you never saw coming? When the financial security you depended on disappears, or when someone you love walks away? In those moments, faith is no longer about convenience. it becomes a choice to trust even when you don't see the outcome, a choice to believe even when you don't understand. Faith, real faith, isn't about having all the answers. It's about holding on to God when the answers never come. Hebrews 11:01 says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That means faith isn't built on what we can see or touch. It's built on trust. Trust in the character of God. Trust in His promises. Trust in who He is, even when life doesn't make sense. Think about Peter when he stepped out of the boat onto the water. Jesus called him, and as long as Peter kept his eyes on the Lord, he walked on the waves. But the moment he looked at the wind and the storm around him, fear took over, and he began to sink. That's what happens to us. When we focus on the problems, the unknowns, the things we can't control, fear and doubt creep in. But when we fix our eyes on Jesus, faith takes over. Some of you may be in a storm right now. You're looking at the waves crashing around you, and fear is telling you that you're going under. But I want to remind you, Jesus is right there. He hasn't left. He's reaching out, just like He did for Peter, and He's saying, trust me. One of the greatest examples of faith in the Bible is Abraham. God told him to leave his home, to step into the unknown without giving him all the details. And he obeyed. Later, God asked him to sacrifice his son, the very son that had been promised to him. That didn't make sense. That went against everything Abraham could understand. But he trusted. And because of his trust, God provided a way. And Abraham's faith became a testimony for generations. God is not asking us to understand everything He does. He's asking us to trust Him. We may not see the full picture right now, but He does. He knows where He's leading us. He knows what He's preparing us for. And He is faithful to His promises. So the question is, will we trust Him? Will we step forward in faith, even when we don't see what's ahead? Will we believe that He is good, even when life doesn't feel good? That's the kind of faith that pleases God. Not faith that depends on circumstances, but faith that depends on Him alone. No matter what you're facing, don't let fear win. Don't let doubt pull you away. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep trusting, keep believing, and know this, even when you can't see the way, God is leading you exactly where you need to be. All throughout Scripture, we see people who were called to trust God when life didn't make sense. People who walked through trials, who faced impossible situations, who stood at the edge of uncertainty and had to make a choice, trust God or give in to fear. Their stories weren't easy, and their journeys weren't without struggle, but through their faith, we see a powerful truth. God is always faithful, even when we don't understand His way. Think about Job, a man who loved God, a man who lived righteously, and yet in an instant he lost everything, his wealth, his health, and even his children. One moment life was good, and the next his world fell apart. And what makes Job's story so powerful isn't just what he lost, but how he responded. In his deepest grief, in his darkest hour, he didn't curse God. He didn't turn away in anger. He said, though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. That's faith, that's trust, that goes beyond circumstances, beyond human understanding. Job didn't have answers. He didn't know why he was suffering, but he chose to trust that God was still good, still in control, even when nothing made sense. And in the end, God restored Job, not just because of his suffering, but because of his unwavering faith. Then there's Joseph, a young man with dreams, a vision of what God had in store for him. But before that dream could become a reality, he was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If there was ever a reason to question God's plan, Joseph had one. If there was ever a moment to say, God, this isn't fair, it was in that prison cell. But Joseph held on to his faith. He didn't let bitterness take root. He didn't allow his circumstances to dictate his belief in God's goodness. And years later, when he stood as a ruler in Egypt, when he saved an entire nation from famine, he looked at his brothers, the same ones who had betrayed him, and said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." That's what trust looks like. That's what faith does. It holds on even in the pit, even in the prison, even in the trial, because God's plan is bigger than what we can see in the moment. And what about the Israelites standing at the edge of the Red Sea with an army behind them and no way forward? They thought it was the end. They thought they were trapped. But God was working a miracle they couldn't see yet. The sea didn't part before they got there. The answer didn't come early. It came right on time. And God made a way where there was no way. Maybe you're facing something right now that feels impossible. Maybe you're in a season where you don't see the way forward, where life feels unfair, where the questions are louder than the answers. Let me remind you, you're not alone. You're standing in the same place Job stood, the same place Joseph stood, the same place the Israelites stood. And just like God was faithful to them, He will be faithful to you. Your situation may not make sense right now, but that doesn't mean God isn't working. His timing is perfect. His plan is good. And one day you will look back and see that through every trial, through every hardship, through every tear, He was leading you exactly where you needed to be. So don't give up. Don't let doubt win. Trust Him, even now, even here, even when life doesn't make sense. Nobody enjoys trials. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Lord, send me struggles today." We pray for blessings, for peace, for everything to go smoothly. But the reality is trials come. Pain happens. Life doesn't always go the way we expect. And in those moments, it's easy to wonder if God is still in control. It's easy to ask, "God, why are you allowing this? Why do I have to go through this?" But what if I told you that the very thing you're asking God to remove might be the thing He is using to strengthen you? What if your trial isn't just something to endure, but something God is using to prepare you for something greater? God never wastes pain. He never allows trials without a purpose. We may not see it right away, but He is always working through the struggles we face. Sometimes He uses hardships to refine us, to shape us into the people He has called us to be. Just like gold is purified in fire, our faith is strengthened through trials. The things that test us are often the things that prepare us for the purpose God has for us. Look at the story of Joseph. If Joseph had never been betrayed, if he had never been sold into slavery, if he had never been falsely accused and thrown into prison, he would have never ended up in a position to save an entire nation. Every hardship he endured was shaping him for the calling God had placed on his life. And when the time was right, when God's plan was fully revealed, Joseph could look back and see that everything, every trial, every painful moment was leading him to where he was meant to be. Sometimes God allows us to walk through valleys so that we can learn to rely on Him completely. If life were easy all the time, if we never faced difficulties, we wouldn't learn what it means to truly trust Him. It's in the trials that we see His faithfulness. It's in the struggles that we realize He is our strength. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." That means even in our hardest moments, even when we feel like we can't take another step, God's strength is carrying us. Think about a seed buried in the ground. To the outside world, it looks like nothing is happening. It looks like it's been forgotten, covered in darkness. But beneath the surface, that seed is growing. It's being prepared to break through the soil and become something greater. That's how God works in our lives. Sometimes we feel buried by our struggles, buried by disappointments, buried by the weight of life. But in those moments, God is working. He is growing something in us. He is strengthening our faith, deepening our trust, and preparing us for something we cannot yet see. Maybe right now you're in the middle of a trial that feels unbearable. Maybe you've been praying for relief, asking God to take the struggle away, but nothing seems to change. Let me remind you, God is not punishing you. He is preparing you. He sees the bigger picture. He knows where this is leading, and He is using this season to shape you, to strengthen you, and to draw you closer to Him. So don't give up. Don't let the trial define you. Trust that God is at work, even in the hardest moments. Because one day you will look back and see that what you thought was breaking you was actually making you stronger. What you thought was the end was actually the beginning of something greater. And what you thought was a trial was actually a testimony in the making. Life has a way of shaking us. One moment, everything seems secure. And the next, we're standing in uncertainty, wondering what's next. In those moments, it's easy to let fear take over. It's easy to focus on what we don't know, what we don't have, what we can't control. But there's something that can hold us steady, something that can anchor us when everything around us feels unstable: God's promises. God's promises are not like human promises. People make commitments and break them. People say they'll be there and then walk away. But God is not like that. When He says something, He follows through. When He makes a promise, He keeps it. And all throughout His Word, He has given us promises that we can hold on to no matter what we face. He has promised never to leave us or forsake us. He has promised that His plans for us are good. He has promised that nothing can separate us from His love. But here's the challenge: trusting those promises when life doesn't make sense. It's one thing to believe God is faithful when everything is going well, but it's another thing to trust Him when the storm is raging. That's when faith is tested. That's when we have to decide if we truly believe what He has said. Think about the Israelites when they were wandering in the wilderness. God had promised to bring them to the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. But the journey wasn't easy. There were days when they were hungry. There were nights when they didn't know where they would sleep. There were moments when they questioned if God was really leading them. And yet, through every step, He provided. When they needed food, He sent manna from heaven. When they were thirsty, He brought water from a rock. And when they were surrounded by enemies, He fought their battles. But some of them still doubted. Some of them still chose fear over faith. And because of that, many never entered the promised land, not because God had failed them, but because they refused to trust His promise. We are not so different today. God has given us His word, His assurance that He is in control, that He is working all things for our good, that He has a future plan for us. But when the road gets hard, when the answers don't come quickly, we start to wonder if He's really going to do what He said. We let doubt creep in. We let fear take over. And we forget that the same God who has been faithful before will be faithful again. There will be seasons when it feels like God is silent. There will be moments when you don't see how things will work out. But those are the moments when you have to hold on to His promises the most. Remind yourself of what He has said. Go back to His word. Stand on what you know to be true, not on what you feel in the moment. Because feelings change, circumstances change, but God's promises remain the same. Maybe you're in a season right now where you're struggling to believe. Maybe you've been praying, waiting, and nothing seems to be happening. Let me encourage you. Don't let go of His promises. He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. And in His perfect time, you will see that every word He spoke was true. Every promise He made, He will fulfill. So don't give up now. Hold on, trust Him, and know that His promises will never fail. Trusting God isn't just something we do in the easy times, and it's not something we do only when we understand His plan. Trusting God is a daily choice, a decision we make again and again, even when life is confusing, even when prayers seem unanswered, even when the road ahead is uncertain. And the truth is, trust is not just about believing in God, It's about surrendering to Him. Surrender is not a passive thing. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's an act of faith. A choice to place everything, our fears, our questions, our desires, our plans,